Hey guys, God, am I recording or what? So, yeah, this is an important one. I just watched the Today Show. They just published this 3 hours ago. It says Jeremy Renner was trying to stop snowplow from crushing nephew. And this is something cooked up by his publicist or something. Because guys, I really have a tremendous amount of time in this industry in these machines with the brand Pisten Bully. Met plenty of their sales reps and people from I mean, they're a company around the world. Like they have, offices in Europe and all over the place. This is ridiculous. First of all, today's show, it's not a snowplow. Okay, it's a snowcat. And then second, okay, what I just got out of this combobulated pile of garbage was that they were pulling a machine. This machine was chained up. They were doing towing operations, which is when you're most likely to run yourself. If you are going to run yourself over, that's going to be the situation you do it because you're getting in and out. The chain's not right, or it fell off, or this and that. I mean, that's what I'm hypothesizing from a professional level of expertise is what happened. And I've done plenty of towing operations, and I know that's what it's a lot of getting in, getting out of the cat, getting ahead of yourself. Like, oh, I already have this thing unstuck. I'm going to be doing this next. Like, whoa, 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 take your time. And then here's the really important tidbit I got out of there. They're like, we reached out to Pisten Bully, and it sounds like some equipment could have failed. And it's like, I'm 100% sure that no equipment failed. I'm 100% sure this is operator error. And here's one of the best little tidbits I got. They said the indicator light, I'm glad they used indicate, because that's what it indicates, that your parking brake is not set and that you're a jackass and you're about to jump out of a piece of heavy equipment. And there's also an alarm too. Somebody mentioned on one of my previous videos about, alarms on bigger diesel. Like I think they said they were running a truck and they have an alarm. The Pisten Bully has an alarm too. Guys, I forget about the Pisten Bully alarm because when you do this job for so long, you're going to set that brake before you open that door because you don't want to hear the chirp of that alarm for a thousandth of a second. It's just something that becomes exhausting. So that's the level of operator I was at. I never heard parking brake alarms because the parking brake was always set. They said the parking brake indicator light was out. All right, let's take a little closer look in here. All right, guys, right here, to the right of Jeremy's knee, there's a console. And in that console, there's like two tachometers. And one has a cluster of, your, just like in your car, like your an engine warning light, or, there's just like, there's good lights and there's bad lights in that cluster. But basically, just like the lights on your car is trying to tell you things. And one of those lights is the parking brake, just like on a lot of, cars. Like maybe you'll get a little red light or whatever will come up on your cluster. So that light bulb was burnt out. Easy fix. It's a tiny little light bulb, like the size of a seed pod. And you lift this console up and you replace it. So he wasn't keeping up on maintenance. That wasn't important to him. And, if you, it sounds like the nephew, it was like somebody else, and okay, it's now making sense. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure I know what happened. Okay, so the nephew was maybe operating the cat, and the nephew stepped out of the machine and didn't set the parking brake, and the machine started to roll off, and Jeremy wanted to do a, super save. Like, I'm just going to jump up in there in the cab and hit the parking brake, and that didn't work out. I'm very confident that that's the scenario. Guys, real quick story. I was working at this tiny little hellhole resort in New Mexico called Sipapu. And this guy who owns Sipapu, he now owns like 4 or 5 other ski resorts. And he told me when I was working with him that he was going to buy a few other ski resorts, and I'm sure the guy's worth close to $1 billion because you'd have to be to get into that. He's a native Texan just like me, very gung ho, and I would put him even like that. This guy was pretty extreme, and he was even like 20 years older than me. But anyways, old James Coleman at Sipapu, me and him rolled up this run in an old vintage snowcat called a Thiokol Imp, and it's actually unleaded, and it's a 4 cylinder, and it has a stick shift and stuff in it. And me and James get out of the cat. I get out of the passenger seat. James get out the driver's seat. And old James forgot to put his, remember, this is his ski resort. He forgot to put his little imp. He really forgot to get that first gear nice and popped in, so it was in neutral. And we both stepped out. And that little thing started to scream off backwards. And I mean, this guy worth millions of dollars just dives straight into the cab, and somehow, and he's a tall dude, and somehow gets the thing I mean, yeah, he fixes the situation. He grabs the sticks and the parking brakes, or the brakes, and get on an imp. You have these 2 sticks in front of you, and you pull them all the way back towards your chest. The machine will stop, even when it's off. But yeah, so that's a scenario just like what we're talking about. Only I had nothing to do with it. Keep in mind, like, I'm not like the nephew or anything. I'm not like I got out of the passenger seat. So no, this has nothing to do with me. But yeah, it sounds like Jeremy Renner and his nephew are in some towing operations, and it sounds like he let his nephew run the machine, and I'm sure he showed him the parking brake. It's just one of those things, man. My father, the first day he ever gave me like a 1972 Ford Bronco, which are now like worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, we leave the shop, and I mean, I get out at a parking lot or something, and I totally forgot to put the vehicle in park. I'm 16 years old. I'm an idiot, like I don't have all these. And believe me, my father made sure that that did not happen again. He looked me right in the eye and was like, what happened to driver's edge? Like, don't fucking let that happen again. And not because he cared about the Bronco, because he doesn't want, he doesn't want to have to see me in a wheelchair, or just God bless, for whatever reason. So guys, when you're running machines, and you don't get ahead of yourself, these parking brakes and everything are super important. Put your implements down if you have them. Take the time out. Running these machines around the world, guys, I can tell you that that was my favorite part about it, is coming to a stop and making sure the machine was secure. One thing I'm sure you can imagine, these machines have a lot of stiction. That's an automotive term. Like, if your tires weren't aired up all the way and stuff, you'd be very sluggish and kind of spongy, and you wouldn't be getting the best fuel economy and stuff. Well, these machines have quite a bit of stiction. I'm sure you can imagine if it's in the flats and it's snowy, or even if it's packed out snow, those ice cleats, they all kind of just stick, and then the snow with it, there's adhesion too. Like, believe it or not, like if you're in one of these machines running around, then you come to a stop, like there's going to be some friction and heat and then stick that goes into the surface. I mean, I only know these weird idiosyncrasies with the surface because I've just been on it with one of these machines for quite a long time. So you can get out of these machines like without setting a parking brake. I absolutely do not do it. I don't care how flat the surface is. I just think it's just professional to make sure that all the safety mechanisms and everybody's safety is in place. I've seen guys just roll up and they're so confident, it's so flat, they just jump right out of one of these $400,000 machines, and you'll hear the beep in the cab, like they just like, oh fuck that thing. And I don't like working with those people. But guys, I've ran one of these little cats down in New Zealand at a resort called Mount Ruapehu. I actually found a picture on Pisten Bully's Instagram. That machine still has that little cat, and that was decade plus ago. It was a long time ago. and great little machine. I enjoyed it. Just to describe like some of the differences in those older machines, not a whole lot, to be honest with you. The joystick's a little different. The yoke is more or less the same. The seats have the when you get on a public bus, they kind of have that like weird multicolor, fabric. And I've heard like, dude, I saw this guy rebuild a Porsche into like one of those crazy safari cross Africa Porsches, and he had that bus material, and he said that the city buses use a material that's impervious to everything. I mean, as you would want it to be on a public bus. You don't want things absorbing in it like that. So anyways, I'm going to be willing to guess it was very similar type material in these machines in those vintage years. Now in the newer models, it's an Alcantara, and it's a lot like, it looks like a Lamborghini seat, even though, I mean, it suits you more for the heavy equipment, but it does look a lot more jazzy. But more or less the same machines operating on the same principles. The parking brake and the parking brake lights and the alarms are, this is, they still operate very, very similar today. And somebody asked, you can run a piston bully with the door open. And at Vail, Colorado, when I was working with the Stone brothers there, on a hot day, I mean, dude, we were out there grooming with the public at Vail, one of the biggest ski resorts in the world. We'd have like $4 million worth of snowcats coming down a blue run, and people jibbing your tiller and just doing all this crazy stuff. And on those super hot days in March and April, you could open the sunroof in the Pisten Bully, and Pisten Bully is a brand that takes pride in their sunroofs and realizes how important that is. And then also you could open the door, and as long as, I mean, it was relatively safe. I mean, you got your seatbelt on. In my concern, I'm more concerned about the door. I mean, you're going uphill, and if you keep it nice and slow and it's maxed out on it's all the way into its hinges, I don't know. Look, these were 20-year veterans who were doing it, and I was doing it, but we were doing it safely, like, what does Jordan Peterson say? Your kids must go do dangerous things in life, but they must do dangerous things extremely safely. So that's it. But guys, in this video, I can't help but feel to come to Pisten Bully's defense. These guys were in the middle of a towing operation, and they were, one had some experience. That's why I made Renner had some experience. His nephew had next to none. Like you're in this crazy, out of this world machine that are becoming more prevalent on, now on YouTube. You just see more and more people like, oh, I spent $20K on this old snowcat from a ski resort. And it's like, all right, bud, slow down there. But I think that's all I can say at the moment. And yeah, Pisten Bully is 100% not at fault for this. I'm glad, like, literally as I was explaining it to you, it all started to kind of fit into place. And guys, I don't really talk a lot about the people who ran themselves over with snowcats. I mean, it's just, I worked with so many people and met so many cat operators, and it's just a conversation that wasn't important to us. What's important to us is who is the baddest, who is the most talented with the machine. That's generally the conversation we were having. And I mean, it's just like you can see it really, like if you're working in the terrain park, or if you're working with other guys, you can see the guys who just have this thing just dialed in so tight, and it's incredible. You feel like you're in like a fighter jet aspect scenario out there, and really cool, really cool. But yeah, that, to fill you in on our conversations, that would be the, like who could fan, a blade of snow or whatever, who could run the flattest blade, or who can move the most amount of snow and, in a 5-minute time, or, I could go on, but our conversations about running, or, the thought of even being ran over by the machine were almost not, we would talk about things that had happened in the industry, and just, I can tell you a guy in There's a young man in Crested Butte, Colorado. I would say, I can't tell, back in the mid 2000s, and he had a Prenoth, and Prenoth is the brand that the door, like if you open that door while you're rolling, you're going to end up in the windshield. If your seatbelt isn't on, you're going to end up in the windshield, and you're probably going to break the windshield. Like it's going to send you that hard into the windshield. I mean, you're like that's. I mean, you just the energy going on. You can't. And it's a mistake. Like it's Russian roulette. If that's what's there in this the safety protocol, it's bound to happen. I worked at a resort. A guy flew into the. That happened. His buddy kicked open the door in the passenger seat, and his buddy ended up in the windshield. Broke the windshield. His buddy started bleeding too. So now the resort has to drug test, and because the windshield on these cats costs 5K. There's little strips of gold inside the windshield to make it defrost because sometimes you're out there in severe conditions and the heat defroster is just not enough. You need elements in the windshield to keep it warm and keep you to where you're visually operating the machine safely because it can get western out there, guys. I have seen some things, guys, that I just can't even begin to put into words involving storms like invisibility and just getting completely not knowing which way is up, down, is there a cliff in front of me. I mean, you don't know. So yeah, the defrost, the windshields are very expensive. If you kick the door open on a Prenoth, you're going to end up in the windshield because the parking brake's just going to set immediately, and until somebody hits the override button, and then the parking brake button itself, it's not going to move. So, and that's a fail safe. I mean, that's made for the guy who doesn't know much about these machines, so to keep him safe, obviously. So back to the Crested Butte, Colorado. The kid had a Prenoth, and somebody had override the door system, and he had the set throttle going. So he just got out of the cat while basically the throttle is at full tilt, and the sticks are on your left arm. So there's like an armrest, and he just flipped that. You flip the armrest up when you get out of the cat. I imagine the armrest, got knocked forward, and that young man just got ran over. And I Crested Butte, and I'm sure a mechanic at Crested Butte was at fault for that. And then there was an incident at Beaver Creek, and I've actually met this gentleman at Beaver Creek, and he ran himself over with a machine. I don't remember what machine he ran him over with or the scenario, but it was in soft snow, and that's probably what saved his life. But other than that, guys, it's not something, I mean, I guess it'd be like pilots talking about the crash or something. It's just not in the deck of cards that we're playing with. And I feel like you guys have been watching my other videos, so I feel like it was important to make this one after hearing the news report from this morning. Pisten Bully's not at fault. Guys, it's just a huge culture. Pisten Bully's a big name in the culture, and they have offices, they have machines at every ski resort in the country. I mean, gosh, Canada, you name it, guys. These machines are everywhere. They're great machines. Pisten Bully has really turned the heat up in the cat operating. That their what is it called? Their research and development in the last 10 years is where it's at. Like Pisten Bully's tip of the spear in the snow cat world. Period. All right, later, guys.